Hey there, folks. Welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture, and we got ourselves another solo album review. The newest project from Pusha T, It's Almost Dry. Maybe it's my skewed perspective, but the expansion of Pusha T's career has been absolutely fascinating the past couple of years. I mean, he's always been a presence in hip-hop circles from his time with Clipse, and then taking over as the president of Good Music, and that's not to compare to his deadly skills as an MC, which, if you know, you know. But for a while it seemed like he had his own unique little niche and lane and couldn't quite break out of it, mostly as his solo career seemed to either kinda stall out or just not attract the attention that it should have. See his underwhelming first album and critically overlooked second album for details on that. Hell, even he has admitted multiple times there's a ceiling for his sort of content, even as his reputation spread as a dangerous rapper, a gifted composer, and a shrewd businessman. Then 2018 happened, where Pusha T went toe-to-toe with Drake. It was long in coming, and then came out with the win. Yeah, there was nothing that was gonna unseat Drake's popular appeal with multiple #1 hits from Scorpion and sheer cultural ubiquity, but it was hard to ignore, damn near impossible to ignore, the body blows that Push had inflicted on Drake's reputation. But more to the point, it catapulted Pusha T into a spotlight in which he had touched for years and yet had been ready for decades. His solo sales soared, Daytona became critically acclaimed and widely accepted as the biggest win of Good Music's May run of albums outside of Kanye West's cult of personality. And for a rapper in his 40s, he achieved a level of popular name recognition and presence long deserved but rarely achieved, especially for a rapper who outright admitted that he didn't really play the game. And thus, I was intensely curious about how the hell he might follow it up. I might have still been waiting for King Push proper, but rekindling his relationship with the Neptunes for half the production credits, while leveraging Kanye West as a producer for the other half, meant that Pusha T was coming with all guns blazing. And that's not even touching the features list, where the lingering fallout between Kid Cudi and Kanye West made sure that Push's album remained trending in the lead-up. And if that wasn't gonna guarantee things properly, swinging around to diss McDonald's in favor of Arby's, inspired because he actually wrote that original McDonald's jingle, and then watching Drake continue to throw subs showed him stacking up the W's in the lead up for this project. In other words, everything was built for this to be great, even with Neck and Wrist being kind of a disappointment for me. So does It's Almost Dry live up to the high expectations? Well, let me put it like this. For the majority of what Pusha T does extremely well, this album absolutely delivers. Vicious, grimy, hard-hitting, but cleverly layered. The sort of project that if Pusha T is as locked in as he can be, it's legit awesome. Unfortunately, that consistently high standard of quality doesn't always translate to everyone else here, and the few moments where there are some slip-ups feel all the more glaring and obvious alongside everything else. So yes, I know this review is going to come across initially as nitpicky or otherwise harsh on a great project, and make no mistake, the best moments here sit among Pusha T's best of his solo career, but I'm not sure it's better than either Daytona or Darkest Before Dawn, both of which had a different flavor of visceral punch that, for as much as Pusha T is trying to sound so dark and evil here, well, you know what, let's start with that. Because I always find it a little bit peculiar when mainstream or mainstream adjacent acts claim they're gonna push their sound into incredibly dark and sinister or evil territory, maybe even highlighting some type of experimentation to get there. But then you realize this is Pusha T, who has carved out his lane and has his set crew of producers, and those are Kanye and the Neptunes. And they've got the capacity to make dark music, but not to the extent of the truly wild or sinister stuff on the edge of hip-hop that might truly unnerve a larger audience, and I would know, I've covered a bunch of it. And yet that's not surprising. Pusha T often described how he would watch The Joker in order to get into the right mindset and vibe to create this album. And I mean, that's kind of revealing of an intensely derivative and mediocre film that rips off Martin Scorsese wholesale. It's the foundation point for evil, rather than anything out of horror or exploitation, or any of the truly wild, dark shit that you can find in film. And that does kind of set up a limitation that does not have to be a bad thing, but's worth keeping in mind. Pusha T will take take you on this ride that could be intimidating or harrowing, especially if all you're familiar with is the mainstream, but he's not one to intentionally throw you off. But let's make that clear, it's also not inherently a bad thing. Pusha T is one of the best in the business at this brand of nasty coke rap with a great snarling voice for it, and when he lets his seething contempt drip in between each bar, it's absolutely effective in selling that vibe. Shame the majority of his guest stars never got that message. Yeah, if we're looking for the first major letdown of this album, it's that a lot of the guests really did not bring their A game. I've already talked about Neck and Wrist on Billboard Breakdown and Pharrell's little post-chorus and Jay-Z's lackluster verse, but Kanye is on this album twice as a rapper, and he's so sloppily mixed both times that you almost don't even notice how he wedges in a bar when daddy's not home, the family's in danger, or how his entire verse on Rock and Roll is about his grievances with Kim Kardashian, which once again tries to place him on a pedestal he hasn't earned. And you know what, forget the issues between Kanye and Kid Cudi for a second. You can very obviously tell that Pusha T is leaning into the family angle on that song, try to make Kanye's verse feel cohesive, and it just never works, because Pusha T knows his pedestal is far from pure, but still has value, was accumulated honesty, a purity that Kanye still claims, but can never really back up. And you know, while I actually really like Don Toliver's hook on Scrape It Off, and I'll give Lil Uzi Vert credit for a pretty good verse here, for him at least, I'm sorry, he can't match Pusha T's intensity. His presence feels out of place, which raises the question why Rick Ross, Freddie Gibbs, or any of the Griselda crew weren't called in for verses. They would all make a lot more sense on this album than Lil Uzi Vert. But then there are the odd moments where Pusha T himself sounds more lethargic, or is intentionally playing down the intensity in order to draw in some menace, and gotta be honest, it doesn't always click. The opener, Brambleton, mostly works as a clapback to an old Clipse associate who went on DJ Vlad's show and claimed that all the stories were pulled from his life, not Push. And you know, if you want to launder misinformation through a Fed snitch, Vlad would be the way to do it. But then there was Call My Bluff, which is clever but weirdly lethargic and patchy, and features a revealing line in wishing that his fan base was more like J. Cole's, which I'm guessing is referring more to intensity in numbers rather than composition, or rather a wish that more folks got what he was trying to say and tying back to Cole's college audience. But you know what? Pusha T knows his lane, he knows his demo, and has openly admitted there is a ceiling. I just wish he sounded like he cared a little bit more on that song. And with all that, that's kind of where my criticisms end with a lot of this, because outside of some production quibbles when it comes to some of Kanye's rough mastering, which is kind of inconsistent song to song, or some melodic tones that Pharrell provided that I didn't really quite like the oily melodies behind Brambleton and Call My Bluff, the album does so much so well in such a defined lane that it kind of becomes difficult to criticize. I've seen some folks complaining that Pusha T is only talking about coke, and that he doesn't showcase more dimensionality in his content, but there are two strong rebuttals to that. Number one, there's just a sheer stylism and wordplay to it that few can match even in this lane. And two, when you start digging through the details, Pusha T is saying more than he might otherwise let on. And while it is so tempting to go line by line through some of these songs, I prefer to highlight the shining moments and the focus on the thematic arcs. I love the haunted sample behind the thicker groove and the pianos on Let the Smokers Shine The Coupes, where in between the bragging, Pusha T just casually throws out how the dope gang destroyed his youth, amplifying what he has given up to get this far, and highlighting those who faked it all so obviously with no tangible sacrifice beyond maybe their credibility. Hammered even harder on Just So You Remember, where he highlights the rappers who took out the PPP loans. Easily one of the best songs here for its stalking minimalism, and the lines like Pure as Snow, We Selling White Privilege, and Designer Clothes, These Hoes Losing Innocence. Then there's that fantastic Donny Hathaway sample blended across Dreaming of the Past, where you get that line, award shows the only way you bitches could rob me. Very telling for Push at this stage of his career, and highlighting how his work has really only gotten better with time, has aged really well. And then the gleaming keys from Kanye and 88 Keys on Diet Coke, which deserved all the credit it's received. Even if the content is exactly what you would expect, it's just done so well. Then there's the wispy Hear Me Clearly, where not only does Pusha T set his place amidst rap history, but highlights the easy disposability of modern rap wealth and clout. He's looking for those who can back back up a legacy and their words, where the cocaine rap speaks to his reality and future, where those who dip and dabble likely die young. And hell, for those who want Pusha T to focus on family and legacy, well, it's peppered all across the album whenever he mentions his son, but it snaps into view most sharply on the final two songs. The first being Open Air with the organ and the woodwinds, whereas for as much as he's dealing, he's still the one who's actually going out there and providing for the family and the community, where the government has not. The line, "My heart been black, ain't no hope in here, and we've been let down by those supposed to care." And with all of what he's doing being in the open, he's acutely aware that if and when certain drugs are legalized, he's got the power to be on the front line of the negotiations. That is his power, but it's absolutely taken a toll. Beyond the grisly lifestyle, you can tell he's been burned so many times. And then on the final song, I Pray For You, opposite Labrinth's wheezy hook and the organ, where Pusha T admits that he's reluctantly a role model who want to go down this same dark path. Then his brother Malice shows up to put forward the other side, not only showing that same level of visceral detail, but also showcasing the bigger picture in the context of his faith. And it's a great verse that you can argue overshadows Push on this song, but looking at the bigger picture, that's the point. Malice got out of that rigged game in the music industry, where he might have reaped some of the spoils, but he turned to God to find some real greater fulfillment, and even then he whispers for God to purge them all. He knows that he's exposed a darker side of himself on this track. It's why he goes by Malice and not No Malice, and it's reminiscent of the sort of faith you might see on a, Lingo Ignota's Sinner Get Ready, an evangelical faith rooted in blood and fire, where he will reference the events of Charlottesville and challenges white supremacy to fight fire with fire. Place that in the context of Pusha T's coke dealing in the South, closer around that area, trying to help those that he cares about by surrendering his own soul amidst an apocalyptic worldview where legacy hangs a heavy head, where he describes coke as selling white privilege amidst those who will disparage him in white evangelical churches that will not help the community, amidst a prosperity gospel of which Push has begrudgingly lived and his peers proselytize, where the flames of a deeper systemic collapse are lit, to be matched as both brothers become each other's keepers, where they know each other's vices and sins, but are together because they're family. And suddenly it makes all too much sense as to why this album is titled It's Almost Dry. Keyword being almost, and what they likely both know is to come. And I don't know. What I find most interesting about It's Almost Dry is not how it's Pusha T just making another album of coke rap. It's the bigger picture, where cocaine might be the most common element and overflowing symbol to be contextualized again and again, but where Pusha T himself is looking at legacy and family more so than ever before. I find it fascinating that he defaults to callbacks to the lone figure, the Joker, when there are plenty of better corrupted anti-heroes and villains that care about their families and who have made ruinous, dark decisions in order to preserve their own amidst a world full of systems that are rife for exploitation. I mean, kind of a shame he takes passing shots at comic book fans and comparing them to rappers with more gaudy jewelry than taste, because Pusha T might fit well into those stylized worlds with a very defined lane, but no shortage of stories to be told, maybe closer to the Punisher or Deathstroke, or even some versions of Harvey Dent. Now the next step would be for him to actually tackle that bigger picture, a larger systemic commentary that's only ever been mentioned in passing, but lingers over every scene here, and with Malice's verse to contextualize the album, we get some of that scene, and the hierarchical structures of the larger world than family and business and capitalism, of which Pusha T will hold himself to account, if no one else. But he's a ruthless pragmatist to a fault. He knows in these scenes he's painted, he becomes the villain, even if it's more living enough to be defined in that role. And It's Almost Dry kind of has you rooting for that villain, even though there's layers even to that. I think Push would prefer more idolize him and for the understanding of the sacrifice, being reborn like the phoenix on the other side, rather than just the dealers who see him stacking cash and buying expensive things and want that too. But in a way, I think this is more than just a victory lap. Even in his lane, new doors have been opened with a project like this. There's this transitional feel I can't quite shake, and for as efficiently great as this album is, it's not even 40 minutes, only growing on me with every listen. It does herald more to come. As it is, great project, Not the best rap album I've heard this year, or even among his best solo or with Clipse, still comes highly recommended. There's a bigger picture with this one. Y'all should check it out. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be extremely grateful. Yeah, I know I've kind of been hinting that a new On The Pulse episode is coming. That's planned for this week. I got 6 projects there, more on the rock-leaning side of things. Got lots to catch up on there. Maybe have one more other solo review. We'll see if I've got time. But beyond that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. If you guys want to get involved in arguing about the project, link down there below. Have fun. Also link down to my merch in the description. But beyond that, if you guys want to get involved in my scheduling process, go onto my Discord, or hell, just support my channel, link to my Patreon right over there. Don't feel obligated. Tough times, I'll be fine, but if you want to, options available. Till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.